Alrighty, so we are on Ecclesiastes, and this is lesson 1A, going over days 1 and 2. This is a different book, a different type of book than what we've done before. Usually we've been in history with 1st and 2nd Samuel, and usually we're history, prophecy. We've done some epistles before. But this one's different. It is in the section of the Bible that we call the writings. So that would be like your Proverbs, your Psalms, Song of Solomon, Ecclesiastes, Lamentations, Job. Job is in the writings. And so this is just in Ecclesiastes, as she said, she wanted you to read page 1 in your study before you begin. We want you to know. And she said in there that Ecclesiastes is kind of almost in its own genre. I mean, it's in the writings. It's poetry, it's wisdom, it's it's just kind of this mix. And I actually went in, and you'll see that I have a bunch of different stuff going on here. And part of it is I have some articles about the different types of literature. I have an article about wisdom literature, about poetry, like how do we interpret poetry. I have an article about chiasm and chiastic structure, and then you have your different types of parallelism, inclusio. I don't know if any of these are going to apply. I think that, you know, read the articles, get the gist of it, and see if any of it applies whenever we start getting into our chapters and picking it apart and tearing it apart. It may or may not help us with the points of things. I do have some literary devices going on here. Um, the thing is it's such a mix. Ecclesiastes is such a mix of different things about literature. Whenever we read about King Solomon in First Kings, it said that he wrote like all these proverbs. I think it was like over 1,000 proverbs and psalms and things like that. And so it doesn't surprise me that he used a mix of literary devices and a mix of types of writings to make his point. So Ecclesiastes, I don't think we're going to be able to put it just in. I think it's going to fit a couple of different, not genres, but definitions, I guess. And so things that we need to establish. She asked you to do an overview, and typically, what's different about studying this, and I was telling Joe, I was like, this is kind of crazy. I was like, to do an overview of poetry is kind of nuts. As what we would call like a typical overview in precepts or in inductive study, because in a typical overview you go through the literature, you kind of do your 5Ws and your 1H, you establish some chapter themes, and you kind of get a structure of the writing, and then you go in and you study those chapters. You do that with your epistles, because you want to get the author's purpose in writing, because then everything that you study in between your greeting and the ending fits into his purpose in writing. Like, what is he trying to tell these people that he's writing to? Same thing with history. Same thing whenever you do prophecy, like with Daniel. We did an overview. We went through all 12 chapters. We took 2 lessons or 2 weeks to do it, but we went through all 12 chapters, figured out, okay, when were they happening? When were they written? When were these events happening? What was going on? What are the basics? So then we can fit the details in. Like, how does this make sense? This is the structure of Daniel. We do the same thing with Revelation. Um, there are some books of the Bible that whenever precepts writes a study, they don't do an overview because the book is so big, like Isaiah. And they will kind of structure it as we go. So, to do a typical inductive overview with something like Ecclesiastes can be kind of crazy making because you're not going to get it until you go in and do the details. So with this, I kind of have started going in. She did ask you some questions as far as like key repeated phrases and things like that. And just a precursory overview or reading it, and that's really what she wanted you to do in the first day, is just read through it. You might have started marking some things and things like that, but you're not gonna really be able to develop your chapter themes until you really start marking it and really go in and do the details. I think you can get a book theme. um did you guys kind of notice one popping up as a book theme? Or not yet? um so the book title, the study title is Life Under the Sun. So that could kind of be developing one. Um, so, so she asked you in the first day, she wanted you to read through, and then she went into authorship. And so, who did you determine was the author of this book?
I guess I've always thought it was Solomon, but
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And what are some key indicators that it is?
Well, the first chapter, he says, is there like two of me on here?
It's not.
What's happening? Hang on.
Get a little
Okay.
reverb.
Yeah,
Are you there?
can you hear me now?
Yeah, it's reverbing. It's really weird.
Okay, I'm gonna sign out and sign back in.
Okay. Yeah. Um. So yeah, I think she. So I have these highlighted. The words of the preacher, the Son of David, King in Jerusalem. So I think we know from just coming off of Second Samuel, first or in First Chronicles, and she even took us into cross references in First Kings, that the Son of David, that what I mean that was king in Jerusalem, was Solomon. So I did see it was in the leader guide that I downloaded, which I very rarely look at them. But I was just trying to figure out like where are we going with this overview, which was basically nothing as far as, I mean, I don't mean nothing, but just it wasn't like the typical overview. but in the leader guide it was like, well, some people think that it was somebody else, and it's like, well, how could you, like, if you're taking in the full counsel of the word of God and you just came off of Second Samuel, and like, it's Solomon, it's nobody else. No other son of David was king in Jerusalem. um so, and then whenever you look at, I said it would be good to go in and do uh to read in Kings about Solomon. So, what are some parallels from what you read in the overview to his life? Um, like, what are some comparisons you can make that like, yeah, this is Solomon.
So back to knowing it was him, I kind of got confused at first when I read, yeah, probably already talked about this. Do I sound better now?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Where it was third person, but then when you get to the end of the chapter, there's no doubt when he
Yeah.
says I. So anyway,
Yep.
and yes, Kings was real good.
Yeah. 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 And I mean, and the comparisons, like, he talks about amassing this and doing this, and the concubines, and it's like, well, Solomon did all that. I mean, it's like, he's just talking about his life. He's talking about everything that we read about his life in all that, and the seeking of wisdom, and the comparison and contrast between wisdom and folly, and things like that. It's like, yeah, it's Solomon. So I don't know where people get other stuff from, but um, it's Solomon. So, just going into context, I kept the stuff that we used for First and Second Samuel. Just, you have the Pentateuch and the Law, and then we just went through um, historical books with First and Second Samuel, and then the kings of Israel. It was Saul, then David, and then Solomon. Solomon was the only son of David that was king in Israel. And she had you do some, kind of some background work, and she gave you some cross references, which we have already been through in just in doing Second Samuel and then reading Kings. So, what are some things that you learned about Solomon's life?
Well, I have it. He ruled over all the kingdoms. So he had Judah, Israel, and so he had the whole shebang, which was good. And just the fact, I mean, just that how people would come from everywhere to hear his wisdom.
Mm-hmm.
That was because when I first read the Vanity Against Vanity, my mind first went to pride. And of course, pride, you think of fame and all this stuff. And so then, but then after you do the word study on it, you realize that's not what it's saying. But 700 wives, 300 concubines. It's like, okay. Um, and then the fact that really was, that he turned to Astroth, and then, the other detestable idols, and that he actually built shrines or high places, it says, I think, for them.
Mm-hmm.
That's where your heart's kind of like,
Yes, it was tough. It was
mhm,
really, because he started out so well. Um, I mean, he started out good, really. I mean,
mhm.
um,
And then in God's rebuke of him, and the mercy that was shown, as he clearly states, was because of his dad, because of David.
yeah, yeah.
I didn't know that.
Hmm. Yeah, I mean, one thing that I tracked is, David, whenever he was giving his benediction and whenever he was turning the kingdom over to Solomon, it was basically like keep the commandments of the Lord. That was like the big thing. Keep the commandments of the Lord, and if you keep the commandments of the Lord, this. And it was about keeping the commandments of the Lord. I mean, that was like the big thing. And then when I read about Solomon's life, um, and I mean, it said that he did this even though God had appeared to him twice. And, I saw that he repeated whenever God would talk to him, it was about keeping his commandments and his covenants and his statute. I mean, obedience. And I mean, there were things along the way where it's like, well, okay, because I went back to what the kings were supposed to do. They weren't supposed to amass big fortunes for themselves and big chariots and horses and wives, obviously, and all that kind of mess. Um, and I mean, I was like, well, he started doing that because it talks about how Solomon, he had all these chariots, all this stuff. Um, and so he started amassing things for himself, and then the wives and the concubines. And we get down to the end of it, and like you said, he's building these temples, and these, I mean, we're talking about detestable gods. Um,
Terrible.
Yeah. I mean, I don't even know if we want to go into what was going on as far as the worship. One of it was child sacrifice.
So that was happening in Solomon's day as well.
Oh, yeah.
Ugh.
I mean, obviously before his day, because, but yeah, in Israel, yes, in Solomon's day, because he built those temples to those
Moab.
gods.
Yeah.
And those things are, I mean, it's like if he built those temples to those gods, he was participating in that.
And then I read somewhere, I don't remember what verse, but they were talked about the people that would come to see him for his wit. It said for his wisdom, but then one commentary said they would come to see him. It made me think of today's politics, like lobbying, to have the other things built, but they would bring him. I mean, that's how he built up so much riches because they would bring it to him to have him do these things. Is that correct?
Yeah, I mean, it was, the Queen of Sheba came to him for wisdom. And what's interesting, and I didn't go and look this up, but I do remember this from doing one of the Gospels. I can't remember which one it was. I don't think it was Mark. It could have been Matthew or Luke, where Jesus talks about that the Queen of Sheba will rise up um, to judge. Um, And it's like obviously the wisdom that he imparted to the Queen of Sheba was about God.
Hmm.
And he somehow like went off the rails. I mean, he calls himself the preacher and he wrote the Proverbs. But personally, he went off the rails and built these. I mean, this is a whole like almost like, I don't want to say case study, but it's like he started off so well. He started off with this supernatural wisdom and discernment. He asked for it. God gave it to him. He walked with God. He pointed people to God, and then started amassing things for himself and concubines, and the concubines and the wives led him astray to the point that he built temples to these horrible false gods and participated in the worship and the things going on. Um, and it says that he did evil in the sight of the Lord. And then God judged him on it and said these things are going to happen. Like all of a sudden, he had two enemies. And one was from Joab. It was the Edomites, from Joab, because Joab, he wasn't supposed to do this, and I think David mentioned it to Solomon, but Joab took out all the Edomite males, and that was one of the reasons why he wanted Solomon to take out Joab. And then another was, back from David's day, and I can't remember what that one was from. But he put two enemies, because before Solomon lived in peace. It was a peaceful kingdom. He didn't have to go to war. But by the end of his life, God gave him two enemies and then a third enemy, as far as, he ripped 10 parts of the kingdom away from Solomon's son.
Says he'll only keep one tribe, right? And
Yeah.
that was for the sake of David.
Yes.
Mhm.
Yes. So he kept Judah and Benjamin. Um, yeah, and that's another thing I discovered too. Like, I was like, oh, Rehoboam and Jeroboam, they weren't brothers. So Jeroboam was a um a servant, and the prophet came, or the prophet or whatever came to him and said, hey, this is what's going to happen. He get with the garment and tore it into 12 pieces, and you're going to have 10 of the tribes. And I mean, it was a whole thing. But yeah, so I mean, Solomon's son, Rehoboam, he just kept Judah and Benjamin, the southern kingdom. Yeah. And it's all because of that kingdom split was because of Solomon's sin. So I think this is really, Ecclesiastes is interesting. I mean, Solomon wrote the Proverbs, which is, I mean, you would call it wisdom literature. Um, and then he wrote this, and he starts out, I mean, his theme is, in the NASB, it's vanities of vanities. And so she asked you to do a word study, and what does that mean?
Well, vanity is like empty or futile, like of no purpose. Or
Yeah, meaningless, just futile, no purpose, nothing, just nothing, absolutely nothing. Um, so
Temporary. I got temporary for somewhere.
yeah,
Fleeting.
yeah, just yes. And so then you lead to the question of what, and you're gonna see, like, he has questions in the text of what advantage does a man have in all his work, which he does under the sun. Um, so we're figuring out what is meaningless, what is he writing about, what's going on here. Um, so type of literature, we've talked about this. It's, you could look at it as wisdom. It's definitely, it's in the genre of the writings in that section of the Bible. It's wisdom literature. There is poetry in it. It's really just this mix. And so I put these, we can send out a link to this, but I put these links in here, and as whenever you're going through and doing your more, detailed study, it's like, well, is he using any of these to make a point? And I think that we also need to look at, if he's making a point, um, is it doctrine? Or is he using his own experience or his own opinions to make a point, and from what perspective is he writing? Um, because the wisdom that comes out of the literature is what? What is he saying is futile and meaningless? And then what's the wisdom? Were you able to determine that from a precursory reading?
So I think anything, I had human life, labor cannot produce lasting gain. And it just kind of continues in repetitive cycles. But then I said, apart from God, life pursuits cannot prove lasting and meaning.
Mm-hmm.
So that's, and then I had a lot of other stuff, but that's kind of the point that I got to, kind of how I understood it. Life comes and goes, but it's like if you're apart from God, um, it just continues.
Yeah.
And I think Solomon is, I mean, he comes up with something that he thinks is good, but then it always takes him to someplace not good, like wisdom or knowledge. You get more wisdom, you get more knowledge, but then you get more misery, you get more pain, you get more.
Yeah.
So it's like he can't like fight his way out of a hole, so to speak, mentally.
Yeah, because I think the more you know, the more, having discernment and wisdom like he had, I think you see the bad with the good. You know what I mean? I think you have more awareness of things. So yeah, I think that's 100% true.
Yes. Yes. And it's also, well, I mean, this is like, you can look at this and you can be like, this is so sad. Like, you read this and you're just like, oh my gosh. But then whenever you start seeing the point and the purpose, and I mean, to me, like, okay, so um, the word of God is, that sharp, double-edged sword, able to, split between joint and marrow. And it's like, you take this word, and what is meaningless and what is futile and what is meaningful and worthy. And I mean, you can just take this as a book of application. You can take this, and what is futile, what is meaningless, what do I need to get rid of, and what is from God, and what is his work, and what has meaning.
I saw one of the things that I read that it really stuck with me was that sometimes being wise, we realize how much we really don't know. And that seeing reality clearly, we see brokenness clearly, like the state of the world. And that comes from being one, because you have people who, and I know people like this, I'm going to just say my daughter, but who kind of go through the world, with rose-colored glasses or however you want to word it. And they don't really see, and I think the wiser you get, and sometimes this happens with age, the wiser you kind of become, the more reality you see. And I
Mm.
feel like that's kind of where he is here. And it does lead him to I mean, part of it is sad, but then part of it takes you back to, quite, I don't know, my heart kept leading me back to Jesus for some reason. And I couldn't make I mean, you probably have some insight on that, Jennifer, but I couldn't really make the connection. But for some reason, my heart kept leading me back to Jesus.
Yeah, totally. Like, no, I mean, that's the thing. Like, who is the truth? Who is the true fount of wisdom? Jesus. I mean, that's it. Like, who, and that's what, just talking about, like, this thing with, like, let's just say, like, Tucker Carlson. Um, it's like, well, I mean, a lot of people ascribe to him as being, a smart person or has some sort of wisdom or insight or knowledge, but is it really anything? Or, there's no truth. I mean, okay, ooh. There's always a partial truth to really good lies. I mean,
Or is it vanity upon vanity?
exactly. And that's what, like Satan used that partial truth in the garden to slip in a really big lie. And but it's vanity upon vanities. It's futile, it's meaningless. You can become God. Oh, well, great. What does that get you? Look at what it's gotten us. I mean, you can just look at the whole world and see what that has gotten us. It's gotten us nowhere. And I mean, I was just sitting there, you know, yesterday evening, and I was just like, there is no one that you can trust and no one that cares about you. And there is nothing out there that has any true meaning besides God. God is the only one that you can completely trust, and God is the only one that completely cares about you and has your best interest at heart. And, like, I mean, that truth just like sunk in. And everything else is meaningless. It doesn't mean that we don't have people here in our lives that we can trust and that love us and that we love them, and that we don't have good things in our lives, but we have good things in our lives because we have God, because He's given us those things. Whereas you look at Solomon and it's like, well, I don't know if you guys picked that out. She asked about key repeated phrases. So, like, one of the things that I noticed, and I think I have a lot of books here. It's in chapter 2. The I. I did this and I did that and I decided to, and I was like, oh. And Farag, he's like, I. There was a lot of I's in here. Um, and I was like, oh, that's the problem. I decided. I did this. You know, um, that's a problem. Um, so, what are some other key repeated phrases that you saw that you might want to start marking?
Under the sun, of course, and then fool and wise man. I saw a lot of
Yeah.
futility.
Yep. Yep. Uh, Obviously, vanity, futility, contrast between wise and foolish, under the sun. What's another one?
That's as far as I got.
Okay.
This too is vanity and futility. I had
Yes.
those.
Yes.
That was
Yes.
And I think he had the relating to the sun, whether it's under the sun or striving for the wind, the elements of
mhm.
of earth.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Striving. You mentioned striving after the wind is one. Yeah. Which, yes, elements of earth. Um, and then, the thing that came to mind also, and she mentioned there, there's not going to be a lot of cross references for this study. It's really going to be, I'm going to call it kind of an in house, like, kind of picking apart, like, what exactly he's writing. Um, and we have to be really careful that we don't um come up with doctrine from a literary device or something like that. But I started thinking about it, life under the sun, and I think Gloria hit on it, like earthly, earthly things, and not the heavenly things, because it even says under heaven. And I was like, well, Solomon, when are you writing? Because there's a question in here or a statement of what God has given man. And I was like, well, I mean, we're not there yet, but I was thinking about it and I was like, well, did God give man for that? Or is that a consequence of the fall? Because what did God, so before the fall in the God in the Garden of Eden, what was it like, and what was the command, and what were we really to do?
Multiply.
Yeah.
You got that right, I think.
Yeah, be fruitful, multiply, and fill the earth. Don't eat from the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. Hmm. Hmm. Um. And I mean, he did put man in there to cultivate the garden, but was it really so man could work and strive after the wind? I mean, what were Adam and Eve? Primarily, their life was fellowship with God, because after the garden, then they didn't walk with him every day. And then it was missiles, missiles, thorns, and thistles. You will eat by the sweat of your brow. And we see that theme coming up here in Ecclesiastes, of the toil and the work and the this and the that. And he even gets into, well, I work to do all this stuff, but then I leave it to this person after me that might not be as wise as me. And then what point is that? And it's like, oh, well, these are all earthly things that you can't take with you. So what's the point of all that? Like, I think there's so much that we can, it's like, yeah, this is just something that we kind of skim through when we're reading the Bible, but I think there's so much more that we can bring in that she's not going to bring in through cross references. But um, I think because we're a more advanced class, that it's going to make us think of these things and these doctrines. So what else did you notice as you were going through?
Also, Solomon, he seems to be questioning, he's almost questioning God too. I mean, he's questioning
Mm-hmm.
himself, he's questioning his life, but seems to be almost questioning God as well.
Mm-hmm.
And just seems very unsure.
Yep.
Um, and he's tried a lot of worldly solutions or things that people might think give them joy, or happiness, but yet his father told him what to keep first. God told him what to keep first.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the one thing he hasn't done.
Yep. Exactly. Yeah, that's what um yeah, some of the things that and I mean, you pointed it out. It's like it's almost like he's questioning God, and that's what. And some of this we can't take it as just because Solomon said that, and just because it's in the Bible, it doesn't mean that that's doctrine or that's what God did set. This is his experience. Like that's the perspective that he's writing from. This is Solomon's brain. The conclusion is that life is meaningless without God, and he has come to that conclusion. But there's some things in here that aren't going to be congruent with doctrine. Um, and
I
then,
think I think he also comes to the conclusion that, or maybe justification is a better word, that life is meaningless without enjoying all these pleasures. You know what I mean? It's almost like he's trying to, and maybe that's a glorious point of being angry with God. It's like, why do you give me all this stuff, but yet I have to follow these rules? I don't know. It's really good, and it is very life applicating. So, but there was kind of a hint of that in there too, at kind of as he was trying to put all his thoughts into words, I guess.
mm-hmm, yes, yes, there's this. It's really an incredible book. It's heavy because you feel the sadness, and you feel sadness for Solomon. You feel sadness for like you can see how other people kind of do these things, think these things, like go through this process. Um, we may have been through this process, and it's sad, and so there's a heaviness about it, and there's this like well, we all end up in the same place no matter what we do, and this can happen, and this can, and all that kind of stuff. But then there's a lightness in it. And he even says in here about the light, and the dark. There's that contrast and comparison and that theme, um, of, well, what is the application and the light. What is striving after the wind? What is meaningless? What is futile? What is this? And then what is not? And so it's kind of like there's a light in this of the shining the scripture is supposed to be a mirror and shine the light, um into places in our lives that it's like, okay, well, yeah, I need to take care of that. I need to quit striving after the wind over there, and you know get on get on the right path. um you know
And that was kind of the Jesus part because it's the more you know, and the more you go through this, and it's like, and then the more you realize that it is fleeting, and this is not, especially when you get older, and you're like, this is not, then the more you realize you need God. And so it just kind of makes a cycle, so I think he came to that realization, and that is definitely the light part of it. So
hmm
I think it's just it's it wasn't what I expected. It's good. I mean, it's real good.
yeah, yeah,
I was thinking Psalms. It's nothing like that. I mean, Psalms is great, but I mean, this is good
yeah, yeah.
because it's so relatable. It's just so relatable.
It is.
Hmm.
It is. And you look at Solomon, and he asked for wisdom, and God gave him wisdom, and he was able to do things like, okay, the two prostitutes that came to him with the baby, and and people were amazed that he was able to discern that, and how he figured that out, and how he was such a good judge of in situations like that. But then you see the folly of Solomon as far as like, well, he thought he would do this and he thought he would do that. And I really love the about the wine and oh, but he stayed, you know, wise still. Um, but it's like, yeah, I mean, it's like you see this flip flop, and it is relatable. It is so relatable. It's so human and so relatable. But the message is like life under the sun, humanity. It's nothing without God. Like it's just nothing. It's just futile. Um, I really like.
That was my chapter theme.
Yeah,
Pretty close. Pretty close.
yeah. You're gonna find your paragraph themes once you really get into it are gonna be pretty easy to pick out. Um, so this is gonna be one that's gonna be really easy. There's a lot of good paragraph theme statements. Just I looked at Farag's sermon notes on chapter one simply because it's also going to be an overview, so to speak. But, um, he was saying this is a sermon preached by King Solomon about the hedonistic pursuit of life without God. Life is empty without the Lord, and he had supernatural wisdom from God, but he lived a life riddled with folly. Um, and so that's what he used that word because you have wisdom and folly as your key words. There was also another one. Well, lesson one, day five. There's joy and pleasure, which he found that all to be folly. Um, I think towards the end we'll see where true joy, enjoyment, and pleasure come from. But there's another really cute, big key word. It's like two words and they're synonymous. Were you able to pick it out?
Well, I don't necessarily what you're talking about. This, but I mean, I think, meditate, um, and I mean, prayer. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
he talked a lot about the things that he thought about, the things that he meditated on, the things he um, ruminated on, really.
Mm-hmm.
Because they weren't always good things. But then he also talked about prayer.
Mm-hmm. So I mean that would be that's actually I don't see it in the list, but that would probably be a good one to kind of like you said, like the thought um process, prayer, those would probably be good ones to track. Um I mean, I think you brought up a really good subject. As far as what he thought about wasn't necessarily all good. You can go in to keep your thoughts captive to Christ. Um, and so there's this thing. It was Andy Andrews, and I think he just did a really good job in kind of like this little diagram, so to speak, or flow chart. As far as, and I always use this. Your actions start in your thinking. Um, and I'm glad that Gloria brought this up because it's like you said, Solomon meditated on things and he thought on things and not necessarily what he thought about was and you start thinking about something and in your brain you make a choice and then your choice becomes your actions and then your actions have a consequence or a conclusion or a result, and then you have your culture. Um, you know, whether it's within a family or a people group or what have you. And so I think that Gloria hit on something here where King Solomon, he's just, has all this stuff going on up in his head, but he didn't really take it captive to Christ or to God. And he made choices and he made decisions and he did these things and he talks about it. He's like, well, I decided to do this and I decided to do that. And so then he did these things and he realized that his, and these are the key words, works and labor were striving after the wind. So um, going through this, I saw work and labor, and it brought up another subject for me: our works versus God's works. Um, so there's two subjects to look at as you're going through this. Um, so anything else? Any other subjects that you saw on a precursory glance?
I think it gives us a lot to look at, like self-reflect on.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we may not have pagan spouses, but what do we look at in our culture that's kind of from the same
Mm-hmm.
vein? Or what are we prideful about, or what are we um, striving after that maybe it's just because we think we should, but there's no biblical base for it.
Right.
Um,
Yeah, under my works, I had removing false foundations, trying to achieve fame, wisdom, whatever it is that you're chasing that's not God.
Mm-hmm.
So, um, and then yeah, are you doing God's work? Or are you doing your work? Your eye work,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
your I work.
Yeah. Exactly. Like, yeah. Um, yeah. Is it just striving after the wind, or is there something to this that is a little bit more? Um,
Mhm.
yeah.
And God gives you gifts, blesses you, and no matter what that blessing is, I mean, it's like, you know, it's putting it in work for him versus for yourself. And then, it's just nothing without God. I mean, you're chasing the wind, basically.
Mm-hmm.
And then it doesn't matter how smart you are. I mean, wisdom, and this Psalm's a pure example. You can be as wise as you want to be, but if you don't have obedience in your life, yeah,
Yeah.
it's going to lead you down the wrong path.
Mm-hmm.
so if we could really just master 12, 13, and 14, we wouldn't have to do the rest of the study, right?
Amen, sister. 100%.
Like, but if Solomon couldn't do it, we probably need the extra help too.
Especially after he talked to God twice.
Yeah.
He still
Yeah.
couldn't get it.
Yeah. Ooh, that's a. Mm-hmm. I was like, oh. I was like, that.
Twice. Twice.
Yeah. I was like, oh, they said that. Oof, that hurt. Yeah. Yeah, he talked to God twice, and this is still how it. Oh.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah. So,
Wisdom sometimes does not make you smarter than God. That's what you have to remember.
mm-hmm. Yep. Yeah.
Well, and
Um,
kind of a message to keep life a little simpler. I mean, with as many concubines and wives, I mean, it's like you shake your head and
Peer
it's
pressure.
like, yeah,
pressure.
pressure. Yeah. And And making your ego,
Yeah.
all these governments giving you
Yes.
women.
Goals and yeah, all the things just to hear you talk. It's like, whoa,
Hmm.
it's kind
Yeah.
of hard to keep in check.
Yes. Uh-huh. It's acquiring, like, I mean, he talks about it, acquiring things and acquiring people and acquiring this and acquiring that, and it's like, oh my gosh. Um, you know, and what's it all about, and what's it all for? Um, yeah, I mean, it just,
So here's a kind of a random question. So, like his salvation, so it's like, and Gloria probably knows a lot on this, but it's like when they go, does it go, so they went to Sheol and then is he saved? Is he redeemed? Is he, how will we see him in heaven? I mean,
I mean, to me, from this writing, I'm like, I think it seems like he got it in the end. Like, I think it seems like, but, um,
I mean, God had a special place for him,
yes.
and he knows the fallen. I mean, he knows we, that this was pre-Jesus, so it's hard, it's hard to, so it's like I always wondered how that worked. I guess we'll find out someday, right?
Yeah, this is almost also, it's almost like a confession. Like, I did this and I did that and I did that and I decided to do this and then I saw that this was, and life is meaningless without God.
Yeah, so maybe.
It's and I mean, it's, it does say that Solomon did evil in the sight of the Lord. It's like, well, he did do evil in the sight of the Lord. He, his wives led him astray. He built these temples to, that's a problem.
But
um
so did David.
Exactly.
yeah.
So do
you know
we.
Yeah. At least we're on this side of grace. Thank you, Jesus.
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, it's just, you're just like, oh my gosh. Yeah, I mean, this is almost, Ecclesiastes is, I was like, this is kind of a confession of all of this, but he doesn't really talk about, the one thing he doesn't talk about is following after other gods. He talks about amassing all these things. He talks about the concubines and pleasure and things like that. He talks about work and striving and well, who's it going to be left to, and this and that. But he doesn't talk about worshiping other gods. That's the one thing he doesn't talk about. But he does talk about that everything means nothing without the one true God.
So you think he just did all that for his chicas, for his booze?
Yeah, maybe. But I mean, that's it's bad. Um,
Yeah.
like,
Um,
yeah, just bad business. So yeah, so whenever you're going through this, so your next 4 and 5, or days 3 through 5, I should say. To make sure. Oh, that's already on lesson 2. She's gonna have you start going in with the details on chapters 1 and 2, and you're gonna start marking it up and doing your paragraph themes and getting to a chapter theme. You're gonna, mark your key repeat phrases. Pay attention to your questions, or the questions that he poses. I started last night writing in like point one, point two, point three, as far as like supporting a, like he's making this point and he's making this point and he's making this point, and then so then what's the conclusion? So a lot of this is going to be in-house work. You're not going to have a lot of cross references, but you're really going to want to mark things, those key repeated phrases, those key words. Um, Look at those questions, look at your terms of conclusion. So, in your terms of conclusion, when you see that, you're going to want to see, like, okay, well, what came before that? And how did he get to this conclusion? So, it's this, and then this conclusion. Or this, and this, and so then, therefore, I did this. So, you're going to want to really pay attention and mark those things. And he uses two phrases, life under the sun and life under heaven, and she asks you to mark those in the same way. Um, so, and like Gloria said, all the, under the sun, under heaven, striving after the wind, it's all earthly things. Um, so just pay attention to all that. I did notice I went and I did start marking 1 and 2, and I even went into 3. But if you're marking those eyes, and of course you're marking God, you'll see a big transition in the thinking. It's almost like man's thinking versus God's thinking, or Solomon's thinking versus how things are supposed to be. So yeah. So your book title is Life Under the Sun. We'll be developing our paragraph themes, our chapter themes, and then eventually get to probably, I think, a bigger book theme than just the title of the book.
Life is short. God's love is eternal, so make good choices.
Right. There you go. That's the takeaway. We're done. No.
Oh, we're good. Okay, good.
So,
Sounds like
yeah.
what I tell my son every time he walks out the door. Make good choices.
Right. Well, yeah, and Solomon was told that too by David and by God, and yeah, um,
Twice. Yeah.
yeah. That's what. Whenever I was going through the King's passages about Solomon, and I would like box in where God, like told him like the same thing that David told him. It's like yeah, okay, we've been told this many times.